It's not the kind of moment you expect to see from him. Not him. Not the man they call The Rock. Not the global icon who built an empire with steel-hard fists, eyebrow raises, and a smile backed by fire. Not the former WWE champion, the blockbuster headliner, or the billion-dollar brand with a chest broad enough to carry Hollywood on its back. But this moment? This one was different. It wasn't a wrestling ring, or a red carpet, or a Super Bowl commercial set. It was one man, on one stage surrounded not by cameras or flames, but by silence. And then an eruption of applause that refused to stop. 15 minutes. That's how long the crowd rose to their feet at the Venice Film Festival. 15 minutes of clapping, cheering, whistling, weeping. Not for some action-packed summer flick. Not for franchise hype or fan service, but for a performance that tore down the myth and revealed the man underneath. Dwayne Johnson didn't just act in the smashing machine, he lived it, and by the time the credits rolled, he was crying. They say every legend is built on silence. The kind that hides pain behind smiles. The kind that turns trauma into persona. And for over 2 decades, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has mastered the art of never showing the cracks. From the squared circle to Hollywood Hills, his brand was pure willpower. Intensity, perseverance, dominance. He was the guy who never flinched. And if he did, he never got to see it. But artists, no. Deep down, they know that to create something real, something timeless, you have to bleed a little. You have to give something that doesn't come from scripts or contracts or charisma. It has to come from you. And that's what made the smashing machine different. Because this time, Dwayne Johnson didn't hide. He gave us everything. The film tells the brutal, gut-wrenching story of Mark Cura, former UFC champion, known for his raw power inside the cage and his quiet, crumbling life outside of it. Addiction, pressure, emotional damage disguised as discipline. It's not a story wrapped in triumph. It's a story wrapped in truth. And for Johnson, who'd long admired Kerr, this wasn't just a role. It was a reckoning. From the very first frame of the movie, you can feel it. Gone is the polished swagger. Gone are the cheeky grins and perfectly timed punchlines. This is The Rock with swollen eyes. A split lip, shoulders hunched not from the weight of acting, but from the weight of being. There are scenes of relapses, violent outbursts, aching. Silences between Kerr and his wife, his coach, even his own reflection. At one point in the film, Kerr stands in front of a bathroom sink, staring into a mirror, and mutters, "I don't know who I am without the fight." The camera lingers. No music, just breath. And when Johnson says it, you don't see a character. You see a man finally speaking out loud what he's kept buried for years. The crowd in Venice didn't clap because the shots were beautiful, though they were. They didn't stand because it was a biopicker, because it was topical lore, even because Dwayne Johnson's a celebrity. They stood because the performance felt like something sacred. Something we don't get to see anymore in the age of carefully curated fame. That night, in front of the world's most scrutinizing critics, Dwayne Johnson broke the narrative we'd been fed about him for years. This wasn't The Rock. This was Dwayne, a man who had his own silent battles, his own addictions. Yes, not to painkillers or cage fights, but to performance, to perfection, to staying strong for everyone else. Backstage that night, there was a moment between takes one, captured not by official camera crews, but by a small personal team filming behind the scenes. Dwayne in his dressing room, hands shaking slightly, staring at a photo taped inside the dressing room mirror. His father, Rocky Johnson, a legend in his own right. Flawed, stoic, distant. The kind of man you'd earn applause from, but not affection. Dwayne adjusted his collar, touched the photo lightly, then whispered, I wish you could see this. He wasn't talking about the movie. He was talking about himself, becoming someone who wasn't afraid to shed. This wasn't Dwayne Johnson's first drama. Sure, he's done serious films before. He's dipped his feet into grit here and there. But this time was different. This time, you could feel the layers coming off as the story pressed on. Layers of invincibility, of brand management, of persona. And as he left them behind on camera, something else happened. Audiences across the world finally saw him, not as a star, but as a survivor. Someone who built power not through clenched fists, but through pain no one ever noticed. And when the film ended at Venice, they noticed. The ovation began slowly, just a few scattered claps. Then more and more. And then, like a wave crashing through the theater, a thunderous applause. And it didn't stop. Dwayne stood there, motionless at first, blinking hard, his jaw tightened to stop the shaking. Beside him, his co-stars wiped away tears. The director tried to speak, but his voice cracked. Finally, Dwayne raised both hands, not in triumph, but in gratitude, and then it happened. He cried openly, freely in front of the industry that once laughed at the idea of a wrestler becoming more than fun summer action. In front of critics who had written him off. In front of fans who had never seen the real man behind the muscles. The tears weren't about the movie. They were about release. In interviews after, Johnson admitted something he's never said before, at least not out loud, that for years he didn't feel deserving of being taken seriously as an actor. That something in him always felt like he had to perform twice as hard to be half as legit, and that this role, telling the story of another man who struggled to find himself once the lights faded, felt like he was finally, for the first time, telling the truth, his truth. It's easy to forget that fame doesn't shield you from pain. It often deepens it, because when the world only wants your highlight reel, you forget how to live in your full story. And that's what The Smashing Machine revealed, not just about Kerr, but about Johnson. That somewhere along the road to glory, both men lost a piece of themselves inside the myth. And this film, this unflinching, emotionally raw, quietly tragic portrayal, it gave it back to them. Since that night in Venice, something has shifted, not just in how audiences see Dwayne Johnson, but in how he sees himself. Critics who once dismissed him as just another action star are now calling The Smashing Machine his most powerful performance ever. Some say it's his Oscar moment, but for Dwayne, it's clearly more personal than prestige. In interviews after the screening, he admitted that, for a long time, he felt like he had to work twice as hard to be taken seriously as a wrestler turned actor, as a mixed-race performer in a tightly boxed industry, as a man whose strength was always expected to outweigh any sensitivity. But this role, the story of Mark, allowed him to confront those parts of himself that had been buried under the spotlight. Addiction, silence, insecurity, the fear of being forgotten once the crowd stops cheering. These weren't just part of Kerr's story, they mirrored parts of Johnson's journey too. It's ironic, almost poetic, that it took playing someone else to finally reveal his truest self. No explosions, no punchlines, just pain and honesty. And the fans, they felt it. You can see it all over social media, people sharing how the film reminded them of their own quiet battles, how seeing someone as strong as The Rock break down made them feel less alone. That's the real impact. That's what separates a good film from a great one. It doesn't just entertain you. It reaches into your chest and stirs something you didn't realize was still there. For Dwayne Johnson, The Smashing Machine might not just be a career shift. It might be a personal breakthrough. After decades of being seen as indestructible, this is the moment he finally allowed the world to hear his silence, to see his tears, and to understand that sometimes real strength has nothing to do with muscle. It's the courage to be vulnerable. And as the applause echoes past that Venice stage and into his future roles, one thing is clear. He's no longer just The Rock. He's Dwayne Johnson, the storyteller, and his most powerful story might just be the one he finally told about himself.